Hi, my name is Pat Walsh, and what you're about to see is our first live streaming video introducing Peter Antico to the SAG-AFTRA community at large. Having worked background, stunts and acting for nearly 40 years, Peter Antico's experience runs the gambit. With your help, Pete can become the next president of our guild. I've known the guy for 20 plus years, and there's no better guy for the job. He's definitely got my vote. I think you will be impressed with his enthusiasm and his passion for this position. He's got sound principles, ethics, and he believes in accountability. So relax, look at the video, and you decide for yourself if Pete Antico is the right man for the job. Vote Antico, baby.
Okay, can you hear me? Can people see me? Can you see me now? You got it. You got. Okay, good. Okay, so what I'm doing is that I have been a proponent of qualified audits or forensic audits in regard to our guild SAG-AFTRAs, both the pension and the health plans. Robin Riker, who is also listening in on the panel, the National Board Member, has been a party to this right along with me, supporting it for years and years. What happened in 2008 and 9 is we were embezzled, for millions of dollars, and they never did a qualified audit to protect us after that fact. The insurance paid back approximately $2.4 to $2.5 million. However, we never got to the nitty gritty of actually, to the penny, what was taken. So they had an arrest and conviction of Karimi Nader, or Nader Karimi, who was the chief information officer, but they didn't arrest him for embezzling the money. They arrested him for tax evasion and taking kickbacks. So he didn't pay taxes on the kickbacks he got from vendors. So which bodes the question, if he didn't get arrested for the embezzlement or for the crime thereof, who is responsible? So I have recently filed a Freedom of Information Act request, as did Robin Riker, Cupid Hayes, and several other interested members who have been for years trying to out transparency and stand for accountability, to no avail. So to give you a little bit of history, I remember they were speaking about merging the union in 2012. And normally when you merge two business entities, you would file tax returns, or you would audit tax returns of that entity 3 years back, match them with their banking records, and then go over their accounts payable, receivable, for the simple reason of you must find a true valuation of those two companies that wish to merge, so you could see if one is valued more than they stated or valued less than what they stated. So you may want to end up paying more or less for that particular entity, but not to do intensive financial analytics in regard to a company that you wish to merge for is simply financial negligence at its highest, and nobody or no corporation in the company in the country would ever practice that kind of foolish financial behavior. So SAG-AFTRA didn't do that. So when they merged, they said everything was okay. They also didn't disclose the fact that there was a multi-million-dollar embezzlement in our pension plan. So basically, before the merger, we got induced to merge based upon propaganda, because I don't know how the vote would be if David White and Unite for Strength had disclosed we have a multi-million-dollar embezzlement, it's under investigation by the FBI, and AFTRA was virtually bankrupt, or 4 months away from being bankrupt, and had 11,000 members listed on their books that did not exist. Okay. So in speaking about accountability, you see, it's important that our leadership is honest with us. We can't then take people that are supposed to be responsible for the economic well-being, the Secretary Treasurers and the National Board and the Finance Committee. You can't tell me that they can continue wasting dues money in secret. By example, we don't own the building in California, 5757 Wilshire. We pay $5.2 million in rent. 2 years ago, they re-upped that lease for $60 million of our dues money. For $60 million, I could purchase a half a studio. and this is utterly like financial malfeasance at its greatest, because the Writers Guild own their own building. The DGA is extremely profitable owning their building. They rent it out for production offices. They have theaters. They have real estate that they use to keep themselves in the black and run their operations. I was once told by board members of the Unite for Strength side that we're not in the real estate business, but I said we're in the film business, and it is a business and should be operated as such. So not only did they waste the $60 million on the rent, they recently re-upped and remodeled the Cagney Room in Los Angeles for $500,000 in a building we don't own, and now they're remodeling some of the floors in that same building we don't own for I was informed close to $1 million. Not to mention the $15 million to $16 million they wasted on empty office space rented in New York City, because when we merged, they already had a SAG-AFTRA building and they decided they wanted to switch and move to a higher line Lincoln Center building without subletting the building that they already owned. Now, this is completely idiotic to me, because if you wanted to move buildings, you should certainly already have at least, so they cost the members another 15 to 16 million. You know what we could do with 15 or 16 million dollars? We could buy more attorneys, more business reps, more auditors. We could certainly buy and pay for some really good, business analysts that would help go to the studios and analyze the distribution deals, because our residuals keep going down and down and down and down. Member services, I want to speak about that in regard to this financial malfeasance, because the singers, dancers, and stunt department got shrunk to one office. So in the midst of the period of the 3 years or 4 years after they merged, we got shrunk to one office with less reps, while the staff got paid $1 million in raises over the same period. How is it that our staff should be enriched an additional $1 million when member services suffer? How is it that the same national board that is preaching, accountability and transparency is actually leading this union in the dark? So there needs to be a change, and the change needs to be, for accountability. Now, the Department of Labor, myself, Robin Riker, and Cupid Hayes, and about, I think, 10 to 15 other interested, solid members at large, including some of the national board and on the membership first side and independents, have been filing complaints with the Department of Labor for 5 to 6 years. It resulted in an additional $3.4 million embezzlement outed in AFTRA, and an additional $756,000 in overspending and misappropriation of funds with the Screen Actors Guild pension trustees. Now, 9 months before this happened, I was at a healthcare meeting, and David White and Michael Estrada were stating that our both health plans were fine to merge, there was no problem with them, and that the Department of Labor gave them a clean bill of health. And I stood up and challenged the room and said, well, respectfully, I'd like to know if there was a forensic audit performed on either plan. Gabriel Gutierrez, our president, threatened to have me thrown out of the room. Now, why would the sitting president of SAG-AFTRA threaten to throw a member with 38 years of pension credits out of the room? Because I have every right to ask about the financial solvency and about the analytics performed, so I know that my health care and my pension is protected. Because if you want to merge the two, I want to make sure one isn't subsidizing the other. Because when it comes down to it, the health plan for AFTRA, a family of four, the premium is $17,620, the $17,260 per year for a family of four. In the Screen Actors Guild, the same health plan for a family of four, the premium is $1,620. So SAG's plan is 10 times superior than that of AFTRA's. So I'd like to know, with this health plan merger, where it allows, as a combined plan, if you wish to be to collect on a family of four and get health care, your premium is now about in between $2,000 and $2,300 a year. That's $15,000 savings, for AFTRA members. And this is troublesome to me, because SAG's qualification for Plan 2 is used to be about $15,100, now it's $17,000 for both. So we get an increase in 2. AFTRA gets an increase in $7,000, but you can make the case that if someone makes under $10,000 a year, they don't earn a living in that profession. Furthermore, the Department of Labor came out with documents stating that the pension trustees overspent the money, excess meals, personal expenses, limousines, and I believe it was a Citibank expense, an extra investment expense that they put out in their document. But at the national board meeting, David White said that the Department of Labor can go pound sand, and we don't agree with their findings. And if we didn't want to waste any more money, we would fight it. I find that statement disingenuous and false on its face, because David White is the one that lied to people and stated before merger that the FBI wasn't investigating the plan, and he stood behind Bruce Dow and our pension plan, and nothing was wrong. The investigator, Nancy Solomon, who was a friend of David White's, who investigated the pension embezzlement in 2008, stated that there was nothing wrong and most of David Simmons' allegations were false. David Simmons was the whistleblower who actually outed the Screen Actors Guild pension plan, Karimi Nader, and other employees for embezzling money.
Craig Simmons, Pete.
Sorry, Craig Simmons. You're correct, Robin. Craig Simmons was the lawyer that outed them. So he filed a wrongful termination suit, was paid a settlement, and was given a gag order. But the point is that Nancy Solomon, the special investigator, who is not a finance person, she's an attorney, came back and said that most of Mr. Simmons' allegations were false. Well, most of Mr. Simmons' allegations were proven true. But here's the second point. Most of Mr. Simmons' allegations, which Nancy Solomon, the investigator, said were false, then were given to Price Waterhouse. And then Price Waterhouse reviewed a third party's report. So Price Waterhouse never did a hands-on forensic audit with the Screen Actors Guild pension plan. The pension trustee letter clearly states that Nancy Solomon, a special investigator, then gave her findings to Price Waterhouse Coopers, and then parentheses, it stated a forensic auditor. So that's an interesting play on words, because that means that if I got my car fixed and the milkman is supposed to make an assessment about my car, about what's wrong with it, and the milkman then gives his findings to a master mechanic, that holds no water. The master mechanic never looked at the car. So in regards to these particular finances, we've been led in the dark, and it's about time we had some leadership that would shed some accountability. I want to say that none of our Secretary Treasurers, including the current, Miss Austin, and including Amy Aquino before her, has ever made mention of the millions of dollars wasted on renting empty office space and the $1 million in furniture purchased in New York at SAG members' expense. They've never actually held people accountable for spending an extra $500,000 remodeling a CAGNY room in a building they don't own, and they've never mentioned any of the excessive raises given to executive staff at the members' expense. So this is supposed to be a member-run union, and it is now being run for the benefit of the staff. Now, to add insult to injury, the staff that received an additional executive staff $1 million also enjoys over double our pension benefit, which means their pension cap is $210,000. They can retire at age 55 with 70% of their last 5 consecutive best years of employment. That means us as SAG members who gave them this plan, we can retire at 55 with 70% of our cumulative earnings. We don't have the benefit of taking any of our 5 best years. So if you were a series regular on 1985 to 90 and your average was $300,000 a year, if you had the pension, if you had the staff's benefit, you could retire with 70% of the cap, 210, which means you'd get about $150,000 a year. Instead, the max you can get is only $67,500 a year. So if you're Tom Cruise and you've made hundreds of millions of dollars, you can only make at age 55 $67,500 per year, as opposed to a staff member who made $100,000 his last 5 years in a row. His pension would be $70,000 more than Tom Cruise. So I find this, disingenuous, and any SAG member, actor, stunt performer that has qualified for a pension should receive the same pension and health terms and conditions as that of our staff. And I've been informed that the current leadership Unite for Strength. I'm informed that they're in support of the staff making this because they said that's the only way to get such brilliant talent to work for us. And I say the economic figures don't support that. The economic figures support that our staff has spent us into oblivion, has not been accountable, has lied to us for pre-merger, lied to us about AFTRA's books because they were virtually bankrupt, and lied to us and said that there was no FBI investigation on the pension plan. Because who would have voted up a merger if we were told that there was an FBI investigation going on in our pension plan for millions of dollars, and then AFTRA was virtually bankrupt and had 11,000 members on their books that didn't exist? I wouldn't. That's like buying a stock and going, hey, buy this stock, but we're not going to disclose to you that the insiders already sold 80% and they lost all their mining permits and they won't be able to be in operation for the next, for 6 more months. That is called inducement. People have to be honest. If you want to merge or present a financial case or even a contract case to anyone, you have to be honest on both sides. This is what you're getting into. Here's the financial outlook for this company. Here's the report. Here's the audit, and here's the audit for the other side. And I'd like to throw it up to the membership for their decision, because it's not fair that you don't disclose things. I think every one of us would be appalled if we went to buy a house and the realtor sold it to you, but they didn't tell you that the foundation was broken, and you bought it and you had to spend hundreds of thousands to clean up your foundation. So, that's basically what's currently going on. And what I've done to protect you, along with Ms. Riker and Cupid Hayes and several other wonderful members that have been educated, is we continue to file ethical complaints to the Department of Labor and the Department of Justice to protect all members' pension and health, because the only reason to be in a union is to get better wages and working conditions and to have a viable pension and health plan. And in regards to the great performance of David White, who Gabriel Gutierrez has touted as the next second coming of Christ in so many words, and I paraphrase, has been a failure. I mean, everything financially that has happened to the Screen Actors Guild has been abysmal since he has been the national executive director. And may I remind you, he's a labor lawyer. He's not someone that came from corporate America who actually ran a business that turned a profit, which is more in line what I would want. I would certainly request MBAs in corporate finance and financial analysts to come and analyze our new media contracts and the things that I think they're fractionally abysmal, because you should take Netflix year-end earnings, Amazon year-end earnings, and obviously those are subscription-based services, and then any ad revenue from ad-based services, and you should take those metrics and then come up with a figure in new media that's residualable, that can earn people a living wage. And obviously it's from the top down to the background. The background is not organized, and even our background performers who have been there for years, their car checks were $35 37 years ago, and now it's $37.50. So that didn't come up to the cost of living, and that should come up to $100 and at least $125 a day. And if you have a classic car, $250 a day. It's like, if we're an inclusive union body, we have to include everyone's interests. And as far as the stunt, my stunt peers and my stunt brothers and sisters, our contract, we haven't had a raise in 9 months. It is absolutely unconscionable that stunt coordinators on television don't have mandatory residuals. Their contract should be $5,500 a week minimum with residuals, because you're working 15, 16 hours a day, and you have to prep sometimes 2-3 shows in advance, and you don't get paid for that fact. And furthermore, the residuals that you don't get, the reason it's unconscionable is because if you're a coordinator on television and you hire stunt doubles, they're going to make more money than you, and they just come and go, do their thing, and they leave. Plus the fact it's a big safety issue. If you're coordinating TV and you're working 15 hours a day and you're dead tired, and you got to come back and you got to coordinate stunts, and then you got to prep next show, and you're responsible for everyone's safety, it should be mandatory that you have a 12-hour day, and after that 12 hours, that you should have a mandatory assistant to delegate this, so you can get the proper rest, so that the actors and the crew are safe. And this is a big issue for me, because this needs to be fought for in the negotiating room. And we need a leader that is strong, that will look out for all of our interests, and most respectfully, economically. I can make the economic case over the last 20 years that the action movies like the Transformers, the Lethal Weapon series, the Last Boy Scouts, the Fast and Furiouses, all of the big action franchises over the last 20 years have generated billions and billions and billions of dollars at the box office. these billions, they, at the trickle down effect, they pay studio head salaries, they pay actors their large salaries, they pay agent large salaries. So I can make the case that the stunt community and industry all over the world enable this wheel, this whole financial machine at Warner Brothers and Fox and Universal to run. And we provide the finance for it to run it. And yet it seems like economically we're entirely disrespected and we're not acknowledged nor compensated for it. To me, it's unconscionable that a stunt coordinator on feature films of $10 million and above, the minimum should be 10 million. I mean, excuse me, the minimum should be 10,000 per week for a coordinator. Right now it's 5,700 per week. And for doing that huge job of making sure that everyone's safe, and now everyone that coordinates understand the massive amounts of paperwork that we have to do to all departments to cover ourselves. Again, for working 14, 15 hours a day and being responsible for the safety of everyone on a set, that salary is, we're grossly underpaid at this time. So at this time, Pat, I'm gonna take it back over to questions to have people to comment on some of the issues and things. Thank you for listening.
Okay, awesome, great, good stuff, Peter. I want to introduce some of the guys on the panel. We will take some questions. We got a lot of chatter online as well. So one of the issues, Pete, is when you're talking, it's just a little low for the people on the stream. I'm kind of losing your video at the moment, but so just when you're speaking, just speak a little bit more towards the microphone, a little bit louder. And then in between when someone has a question, maybe I'll be watching the side panel and maybe you can kind of raise your hand and then we'll get a question on. But Pete, you take those cues as well from, you can see everybody on the side panel?
Yeah, I turned my mic up.
I think that would be better, yeah. Definitely.
Okay.
So we'll just use hand signals on the side, but we had Cupid Hayes in here for a bit. I think she was a national board member. She was I guess in her car. We have Jennifer Badger. We have Robin Riker, who's a national board member. We have Chris Barnes, who's a stunt coordinator, local. Hey, Jennifer. We got Chris Barnes over there that just flashed a peace sign. We got from Notre Dame, one of the baddest running backs around, Jeremy Sample up on the top right. We got me here. What's up? So we got a really cool group of people. We got Danny Boyer on the bottom there. He is all over the country. He's was an outsider stunt coordinator. I think he's maybe even down in Georgia right now. Very knowledgeable about the industry. So we'll just pass the ball around with some hand signals. We got a cat, a little kitten. Jennifer's got. So.
Andy Armstrong is trying to click it. Make sure he has the link. He just texted me, so he wants to get onto Andy Armstrong.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to try to get Andy in here. Again, this is our first time that we've done this. We're just doing a little technical hacks, but it looks like it's a pretty cool thing. And I think we could, in the future, use some headsets and stuff like that just to deal with the echoes and stuff. But we got a nice little turnout. We'll try to get Andy in. But let's go to the first question. So who would like to answer or who would like to ask Peter a question on the panel?
Can anybody hear me? You
I
can
hear you.
Okay. Pete, I just was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more or allow me to fill in a little bit about that pension and health disparity.
Sure. I can. What would you like to do? I can elaborate because on regards to the pension disparity. What would you like to do?
Maybe you could just let me just lay out something here, and you back me up if you believe it would. For a long time, the staff at Screen Actors Guild had their own P&H plan. And then I think it was sometime in the early 2000s, I know it was sometime in the early 2000s, when for some reason their plan went belly up and our union decided to fold them into our pension and health plan. And if originally for the first couple of years, both staff and union members were all accruing their pensions at the same rate, the same rules applied to staff and members. Then suddenly, I think it was around 2009, everything changed. And the descriptions that Peter gave earlier about the staff suddenly, it was voted by our trustees that were appointed by the National Board that staff, first it was recommended that everybody take a haircut. But then it was decided by our trustees that only actors and union members should take a haircut, and that the staff should continue to accrue at the rate that we all used to accrue at. This always astonished me because staff, unlike the rest of us, has a regular job, a regular paycheck that they can count on. What justifies their accruing at a greater rate than we do? So I just wanted, Pete, for you to underscore that, or to correct me if there's anything there that you think is incorrect.
No, that's it. That's incorrect. What's unconscionable is the Unite for Strength people are stating that this is okay, because Mike Hodge in a report, actually in one of the Facebook web pages, I saw someone stating that the staff deserve it because they work a 9-to-5 job. And I thought that was, I really had to fall out of my chair when that was spoken, because a staff has a steady job, 9 to 5. They don't have to worry about where their next job comes from. Actors work residual to residual, stunt people the same. They don't know where their next job is coming from. And to think because a staff works 9 to 5, and that's the case being made, why they should have double our pension terms and conditions. To add to what you said additionally, Robin, is that AFTRA's pension plan, their cap is $200,000 per year, not per employer, per year. Get this, their accrual rate is 0.86%. That means if you make $200,000 in AFTRA per year, you get $1,720 contributed to your pension under AFTRA. If you made $10 million in AFTRA in 1 year, you get $1,720 contributed to your pension. In SAG, your pension is your cap is $225,000 per employer per year, meaning that if I worked for ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC, and Sony Pictures Entertainment, and I made $1 million and spread out through all 5, my accrual rate's 2%, and I'm gonna have $20,000 contributed to my pension. So they're vastly different. It's virtually impossible to score a maximum pension in AFTRA. So according to the laws of ERISA, our plans are so diverse and so different financially, they'll never be able to be merged because one is so inferior and the other one is so inferior. And the fact that they wanted to merge our health plans, which are the same, inferior compared to ours, without providing the proper financial analytics, is a crime. And the fact that our president would try to kick a senior member out of a meeting for asking what is my constitutional right, to ask, under the Landgraf-Griffin Act or the LMRDA, the staff, the executive staff, a national board, or the executive body of any organization that runs unions, including the pension and health, has a legal obligation to protect the members' interests first and foremost, and they did not do so. Go ahead, Robin.
I just wanted to add that in addition to, while our senior staff is telling us that these pension and health plans, and this is very important, Danny, you were saying about the younger people. Some of us have been doing this for a long time, so we're going to be okay-ish. It could be better, but this is important for the younger members because we're being told by the NED, David White and Gabriel Carteris and various other people, that everything is fine with our pension and health plan. But just last year, some 300 early retirees were booted off of the plan And senior performers had their premiums raised something like 200%. And people on fixed income, our senior performers who helped lay the foundation for this union, for us and for the younger people. So if everything is great, why can't we afford to take care of our people to whom we have promised care and support for the future?
Okay, now that's great. I'm going to chime in on that because when we merged, we had to borrow, and this they kept quiet, which I believe at the time it was under a gag order, which it should be, again, illegal. And the National Board room, they borrowed $3 million from the Unclaimed Residual Trust Fund and an additional $3 million from the General Investment Fund to balance their books or shore up their spending deficit when we merged. Now, I don't know why they choose to run this yield in secret, because the Unclaimed Residual Trust Fund in our LM2s, and the LM2s are the year-end financial statements that are public information that are filed by any union body on a year-in, year-out basis. And this particular figure of unclaimed residuals is simply the amount of money of residuals that are due members that they say they can't find. Now, in the last Screen Actors Guild Awards, like Julianne Moore, William Shatner, and stars in that category, at least 40 of them. Dave Robb from Deadline wrote an article after that show aired and said, why is it that all of these stars have money at the Unclaimed Residual Trust Fund? Because he looked them all up, and he said, are you telling me that SAG-AFTRA can't find movie stars? They can't make a phone call to their agents? I mean, hello. I mean, if you want to talk about being financially accountable and having integrity, these people earn money their life. They're entitled to it, and if they're dead, their family is entitled to it. It's not guild money. They look at it like it's an additional pot of money that they could spend, for their own expenses, and they actually borrow money against it. My point is, if they want to borrow money against it to shore up a spending deficit, why can't they borrow $4 million to take care of 300 seniors? Why do they have to take $1 million in raises? Why did they have to spend $60 million on a lease? Why did they have to spend $1 million in furniture? I can make a financial case from A to Z how incompetent the spending is at SAG-AFTRA. And this isn't conjecture, these are facts. Now, if you review the LM2 financial statements to the year end, you can see what every staff member makes. And I can tell you that in 2015, when I looked them up, and this will be on my webpage that is being built with highlights, I post the LM2s. There's about 635 employees at SAG-AFTRA. 113 of them making between $99,000 and $651,000 a year, with over double our pension benefit. Now, to me, that's unconscionable. Now, I will say that I believe that some of the business reps at SAG-AFTRA are underpaid, and grossly some of them. And some of the legal talent that they want to pay under $100,000 because it is grossly underpaid. When I know for a fact when they tried to recruit talent, they're saying they want too much money because maybe they wanted $120,000 or $130,000 a year to start. But these are like Princeton, Yale people with brilliant backgrounds that would help us. And the other thing that I think is run poorly at SAG-AFTRA is that they don't have any non-compete clauses, and they steal people and from our shop, from our union, and bring them over to the labor side. They entice them with a lot more money, and most of the time, if you offer someone double the salary, they go. They've done this with lawyers. Many of the lawyers that we've had that I remember when I started, 37 years ago, they simply scoop that different talent up. So the way to do it is in California. I actually believe that law is illegal on its face, but in other states that law stands. So I would just humbly suggest you hire people out of different locals like New York or someplace or out of Atlanta or places that would be what that law would be in play. So if you give them a 3-year non-compete, if they leave, they can't work and earn double or triple the salary. By the way, I want to say something about Ray Rodriguez, who's our contracts guy. I know he got a rather substantial raise, but I've been informed that a studio wanted to offer him 3 times the money to work for them, and I think he took about a $60,000 or $70,000 raise at our shop, which I think is ethical and fair, because if you went to the other side, he knows where all the bodies are buried and how we work at a high level of competence. And I certainly wouldn't want someone of his knowledge to be on the other side of the coin. He's a Harvard-educated attorney, And though I don't agree with all the contracts he negotiates, I certainly would stand behind that particular raise. You know, I believe in ethics and fairness for, you know, for all members, and ethics being defined as equal questioning of all parties, including me. So that's why I'd certainly be amicable. I would love to sit and debate anybody, Gabriel Gutierrez from the Unite for Strength side, on any of these issues with the evidence that I have, because respectfully, this union shouldn't be run by people because we like them. It's not about affinity. Oh, I like Gabriel, she's a real nice person, so I'm going to vote for her for president. Well, I think you should vote for president in our national board based upon their accountability. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you got a broker and you say, I love my broker, but he lost me 16 million, are you going to hire that broker again? Or are you going to get somebody else? I'm open for more questions.
Really great stuff. We got another panelist that just came in, Andy Armstrong. Again, panelists, just when you're not speaking, if you could just push mute, that would be awesome. But maybe we could even, you know, Andy, if you want to, you know, maybe chime in here, introduce yourself, and maybe.
Guys, I was on another call, but I was just going to listen for a while. See, you know, I'm a supporter of Pete's run. I think it's mostly based on, I think there's a time that we need now. We need some fairly simple honesty, really. I think there's been some irregularities and if not unethical actions, there's been some certainly questionable actions. And I think it's time that we sort of revamp a lot of the way that we run the guild.
Now, anybody doesn't know, Andy's been a member for well over 40 years. He's made films, you know, I think in 44 countries. He's probably one of the most well-known second unit directors, stunt coordinators in the world. And
If not the oldest, anyway.
Not the oldest. And you know, him and his family have been doing, you know, second unit on films, like I said, for the last 35 to 40 years. So he has a lot of knowledge, and also has been around. He's probably, you know, maybe a year older than me, though I don't look it. No, just kidding. He certainly has a lot of knowledge and a lot of integrity, and what I bring to the table is honesty, and you can count on me to certainly be transparent and fight for the issues. And if we screw up, I would say, hey, we made a mistake. We blew $4 million of your money. We're going to have to clean that up. That's the kind of honesty that should be there. Our leaders should say, yeah, we made a mistake, instead of hide it. How dare secretary treasurers that are sworn to fiduciary duty lead in the dark? How dare they not tell the truth? How dare they not hold our leaders accountable for wasting our money and then tell us we don't have enough reps to service our claims? Our labor lawyer can't even enforce our travel. They can't even enforce our per diem. And we're led by a labor lawyer that's a Rhodes Scholar, and our contracts don't get enforced. Furthermore, he didn't even re-up his state bar, so he's not even qualified to practice law because he didn't re-up his 12 hours per year. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that whenever the executive staff is confronted with things like the malfeasance that was revealed, the 3.4 million embezzlement from after SAG this last January that was revealed, what they react to is the fact that, how dare someone from the union reveal our dirty laundry? It isn't ever about the crime or the malfeasance. It's always that somehow they've been betrayed by someone within the union, you know, as though we're not allowed to converse with one another and share what it is that we see that needs correction. That has always just astonished me. It's all about the leak, never about the crime.
Well, Jonathan Handel, this is interesting. During that time, if everyone wants to look up, you can Google search, AFTRA's finances plagued with problems in 2012. Jonathan Handel, who has it's a Harvard graduate in math analysis, so people should know that. He's a reporter on both sides. He's been on both sides of the aisle, been pro and against a lot of people. So he's got a little bit of a controversial reputation. However, he does have a huge education. And when he wrote this article, it's interesting. In that very article, it was pointed out, a spokesman for SAG-AFTRA said it's disappointing that someone leaked our national board business publicly, that they were disappointed in that. Like Robin said, they weren't disappointed that it was made public that AFTRA had 11,000 members on its books that didn't exist, and they were close to bankruptcy, and there was all kinds of deficiencies that could lead to fraud. And yet AFTRA and SAG said when they merged, they closed those loopholes. But when I asked, how did you close the loopholes, I got crickets. Basically, they just said they qualify the audit. And let me educate people. A qualified audit is really forensic in nature. If most audits are unqualified, a Price Waterhouse, Bond BB, all the people that do audits on behalf of SAG-AFTRA and the pension plan, they're called unqualified audits. In other words, they look at the books. If they don't see anything that raises a red flag, they get rubber stamped and you move on to the next year. A qualified audit is an audit that doesn't do that. They look at every book, every bank integer, every account, every piece of accounts payable, receivable, every amount of money to the dollar, to the cent that goes out of SAG-AFTRA and comes back in, gets audited. It would be like the FBI came in and audited to see if there's an issue. So when AFTRA had those horrible finances and was brought out by Price Waterhouse, that audit was never qualified, because it is standard practice in accountancy that if an unqualified audit produces deficiencies, you then must qualify that audit to find out where those deficiencies came from, A, and B, they wanted to be able to close the loopholes so they never happen again. Now, they never did this. And the fact of the matter is that that's our CFO's job. That's the National Board's job to demand it, the Finance Committee, and the President and the Secretary Treasurer. Now, again, being a leader means you have to have the backbone and the character to be ethical and demand these things. And if our union body is not going to be accountable because of politics, then you must go publicly or file the correct legal actions with the Department of Labor, Justice, and the OLMS and the NLRB to do so. And if we don't have leaders keeping us accountable, I am concerned about every young person's pension and health plan going forward, because I have a great one because of the forefathers that fought for me. And I'm paying it forward because I believe you all should have the same opportunities that I have, which bring me to another fact. The health plan, David White said it's publicly that AFTRA had the surplus, surprisingly enough, when they merged. If that was true, the last 3 years before the merger, they had a subsidy where you could make $10,000 in AFTRA and $5,000 in SAG and get Plan 2 under the Screen Actors Guild jurisdiction. Now, if AFTRA had such a surplus, why weren't they a party to that subsidy? SAG is the only party that put it up. So when they created this subsidy, when AFTRA members were complaining that they couldn't qualify because they would be working on both contracts, which we still have in play, so they came up with a subsidy. But why is SAG the only body that put the money up? How come AFTRA didn't if they had a surplus? Furthermore, if AFTRA had such a great surplus, how come before we merged the health plan, they didn't increase their benefits? Their benefits were still abysmal. The only metric in AFTRA's health plan that was similar to SAG's, if you were a single person and you earned enough money to qualify, then your health care was similar. Other than that metric, AFTRA's plan was abysmal. And again, their health plan and their pension is about 10 times as horrible. It's like, excuse me, SAG's plan was 10 times as good as AFTRA's pension and health plan. So you have to understand the entities that we're merging with. And I believe in this kind of transparency. And Duncan Crabtree, nor David White, nor Gabriel Kateris has been honest with us. Unite for Strength, when they merged, they said that there would be no split earnings and there would be an end to that fact. That's not true. We now have codified split earnings. The biggest issue is our pension plan. And every time you work a contract, whether they work out 57% they said was supposed to go to SAG or 43% on AFTRA contracts, that metric hasn't been proven, it hasn't been analyzed, and it looks to me like more of the money was swung towards AFTRA's plan in order to merge them. Now that's conjecture by me That is not fact because I haven't analyzed it, and I'm honest about that. But it looks like to me, from going over the books, that there was actually not a reason to merge both health plans until you could show me and every member that they had the financial papers that backed it up to do so. If you don't have the money or the synergies in AFTRA's health plan that would match SAG's health plan, or you don't have enough money that you could actually merge them equally. And if one plan grossly subsidizes another, that really is a crime against the SAG plan. Now, I don't know how much of this is true until I can analyze them, but I do know from my preliminary analytics and a lot of good people I trust, from understanding that SAG's health plan was 10 times better, you could plainly see that the family of four plan is getting a $15,000 windfall. That's on AFTRA's side. So I would want this investigated to see how much it costs SAG members, because you have to look at the metric. If AFTRA was in fact virtually bankrupt and we took them over, we actually bailed them out, but they call it a merger. If that's the case and we're supplying all this money to help these people that had an inferior plan, who's accountable for that? It never was audited forensically. We don't know this because they kept us in the dark. And if you want to tell me that the leadership can say, no problem, everything's good. Well, after David White and Michael Estrada, 9 months before we merged the plan, said there was nothing wrong, and we analyzed it. And then when in fact it was merged, within 1 month, there was a $3.4 million embezzlement in AFTRA and another 756 on the SAG trustees. And you told me 9 months ago that we analyzed it and nothing is wrong. Respectfully, everything you tell me is untrue. I want the facts. I want them analyzed. I want it put on paper. I want professional people that do forensic auditing for a living to do that. And it costs about $400 an hour. I've investigated some of the biggest firms in the world that actually do this and have been informed as such and can produce documents that prove that fact, because we've been told by our leadership that Price Waterhouse will charge $2 million, 1.5 to $2 million. Why would you want to employ a firm that has got huge overhead like KPMG, Ernst & Young, and Deloitte & Touche, who are primarily accountancy firms for major corporations, and their business model is not forensic audits. There are 5 or 6 other boutique firms in the country that specialize in forensic audits, and their rates are much smaller. You see, the fact is that most people lead with conjecture without fact. I'll produce the facts and I'll produce the paperwork and I'll get it done ethically. But I don't believe in anything but science. If you have evidence, I want to see it. If you don't, it's conjecture, and I don't live in that world.
Great stuff, Pete. We have another panelist, Cupid Hayes. You want to maybe introduce yourself and join the fray?
Yes, hello. Thanks so much for your patience. I've had a lot of connection issues here. I'm running errands today. Pete, as always, great stuff. I am running for the national board as well as the local board with Robin Riker here in Los Angeles.
And by the way, Cupid, I just want to say something. Cupid also, with Robin and myself, we drafted an 84-page complaint and other measures to protect. We found that there was a petition that was circulated and 1,600 members signed it in regard to demanding a forensic audit on our health plan and our pension and health plan, because we never could find the evidence of them doing it in 2008. We thought that it should be accountable. Go ahead, Robin.
I was hoping, Pat, I was wondering if at the end of all of this, if I could send you a link to this petition to post wherever this is going to post, because it would bring a lot of clarity to people. So I'll make sure that happens. I also wanted to point out that I'm holding here the latest annual funding notice of the SAG pension and health plan. And it says that the funded percentage of our plan at the end of 2016 is at 80.08%, On the inside, it says under federal pension law, a plan generally is in endangered status if its funded percentage is less than 80%. So we are at 80.08%. The market has been smoking hot for the last little while. So whoever is doing our investing at this plan might consider doing a better job of that. This is something that has perplexed a number of us, and that, you know, proudly stating that 80.08% means that we're rock solid in this plan is nonsense when one page later we're only 0.8% away from being endangered. So I just wanted to point that out. So thank you. We'll get that link to the petition, because this is has proof and sources that everyone can go to show what has been going on over these past years. And even more signatures to it would be a boon. So if we do post it and people read it.
I have a link to the petition right now. I can send all of you.
So let me speak to this, because Robin, this is something that I'm well versed in. Since 2008, since the financial crisis, the market's up 200%. Since the last election 3 years ago, the market's up 6,000 points at all-time nominal highs at about 2,100. The Directors Guild pension is funded at 95%. And like Robin so eloquently stated, that we're funded 80.08. That's correct, 0.9% from being in the endangered, the yellow zone, they called it. I want to point out to you that the Pension Protection Act in 2009 gave pensions across the country a reprieve. In other words, they called it smoothing out your liabilities. In other words, you can off balance sheet your liabilities over 10 years, so you can still remain solvent without having to take drastic measures. So, you know, I certainly would like to know how much of that debt is outstanding, because I believe our pension is probably closer to 78% funded. Now, the problem is also that when they forced the retirements in 2012, a lot of the staff got the voluntary severance, and I'd like to know how many people in the staff retired with well over $100,000 a year in pensions that they were just given at that time of retirement, and how much that dented into our plan, because we were approximately 83% funded before then. But and to add to what Robin's stating, the investment managers, which I have asked for, I have paperwork asking Michael Estrada, who's the CEO of our plan. I wanted to know for the last 5 years what the investment. I wanted a copy of the investment portfolio, which means in detail the ins and outs of every investment. I wanted to know what they investment in, the name of the CUSIP number, which is the name of a fund. That's a legal, the number that identifies the fund. How much was invested? When was it sold, if it was sold? What's the profit and loss thereof of each investment? Because I wanted to run a finance case, because I have some very astute family members of mine that are in high levels in Wall Street, and I wanted to run some analytics with some fund managers that I know to see what their opinion was, and what my opinion was from having an astute background in investing in markets for 15 years to 20 years. But I certainly want to put people in on inflation, because it's all about purchasing power of a dollar. The last election, we said that there was the news was they made $200 million in gains, and they were boasting about that SAG-AFTRA made $200 million in gains. And the government's figure of inflation, and this is, in my opinion, a phony figure, but the government's low figure was about 2.25%. The first year we got 2.5%, and the second 2 years it was 3%. Even using their figures, the first year the purchasing power of the dollar means that we got 0.25%, and the second 2 years 0.5% each. And it means that if you're going to give me a raise, and it's going to be 3 years into the future, the purchasing power of my dollar has to be able to purchase equal to the same, or actually, if it was a good deal, more goods and services than I could with the dollars that I have now. Because that's what inflation means. It's purchasing power. So if you're telling me I get 200 million, that's filtered between 140,000 active members, And over the course of the 3 years, that increase in dollars that you're paying the members can't buy me the same goods and services as it does now, then you're getting essentially nothing. And what they don't tell you is the truth there, because the 12 of the largest CEOs, the biggest media companies in our business, 12 people over the same 3-year period earned over $240 million. So you're telling 140,000 members that work in this business that 12 people got more money than you did as a negotiation. And you want to tell me that that's good when you gave away new media contracts where we get no residuals for 24 months or for 12 months. And the residuals on new media, even at the high budget, is only 30%, which is like syndication. How are we going to replenish our health plan and our pension plans when you're making 1/3 the money? And then people are working for minimum wage. The low budget agreements are scale, $125 a day. And yet if those producers happen to get lucky and sell that product for a lot of money, no actors benefit, the residuals are non-existent. So one of my profiles and one of my platforms is that I want the low budget agreement, if it's going to be $125 a day or whatever that metric is, I want it to have a deferment clause in it. In other words, from dime one of profit, all Screen Actors Guild members must be brought up to their normal $9.33 a day or whatever their minimum wage is to make up for that. Jennifer.
Hi guys, I'm Jennifer Badger. Hi Robin and Cupid, it's good to see you guys. On that very note, we all are kind of avoiding we all kind of hate the Netflix deal, and now with studios that are going under Netflix to make shows such as ABC, obviously that screws us over as well. But I had heard a rumor and checked it out yesterday that if we get called to work on Avatar, we will be offered a $300 day rate with the potential of residuals on the back end. I asked some questions about that and was told that that is indeed the deal, which was spearheaded by Woody Schultz and negotiated by Ray Rodriguez. So my question or concern is, if shows such as Avatar are going to be setting a precedent for a $300 rate for stunts and performers, actors, we know about creative bookkeeping on the back end with residuals. I see the point that you're making, Pete, about it, how it funds our pension and health. I mean, at this point, what can we do to move forward and go forward without these, or to improve it, because it sets such a precedent? Here in Atlanta, also, our local is putting up a waiver to reduce the commercial rate for SAG-AFTRA members significantly, as they said, because they feel it'll make us a more competitive market. I don't really understand the economics on that. So any advice you would give on that, I would love to hear.
It's interesting that Woody Schultz is a Unite for Strength member, and respectfully, that kind of strength is sad, because I personally would never allow that. The bottom line is Avatar made $1 billion. Excuse me, I think it made $1.7 billion or $1.8 billion at the all in, which is a phenomenal for a film. To think that you want to give performers, and respectfully, Jim Cameron's a brilliant filmmaker, but the performers on that film were phenomenal. The motion capture people, the stunt people were phenomenal. To give them a lesser rate is unconscionable. For our guild that's supposed to support us, to actually allow that to happen, to me, it's unconscionable. Respectfully, if I was president, I would say no to that, and I would come back, you must pay the regular rate. I respectfully wouldn't bend on that, because, I mean, you can easily make the economic case of the amount of money that earned. I know for a fact that the people on Avatar received less residuals than the members of the performers on Transformers. That's interesting to me, because I think the first Transformers made about close to 800 million. And again, Avatar was $1.8 billion. I think Avatar's had only about 50 performers with stunt people and looping people, about 50. That's not very many, because the cast was about 8 strong, and then they had the war scenes at the end. But I think it was a total of about 50 total in the cast, where the Transformers had about 200. And as we know, our metrics of a little 3.6% is divided amongst the producers' gross, divided amongst the entire cast. So that accounting doesn't make sense. And understanding that the economics of the accounting doesn't make sense, why doesn't our guild go after these companies? Because we should have someone auditing the distribution deals. You can't go to a studio and go, hey, just give us, this is what you made. We made X and here's the residuals. Wow, thank you. Because basically, I believe that's closer to the way it's done. And SAG doesn't employ any auditors. They don't. They only employ outside auditors if they think they have an issue to go audit certain studios or certain films or certain projects on a project by project or on a need to get basis. So as president, I would want to employ auditors that would actually go and get the studio's books on distribution, because if you can see the international deals made, you can certainly quantify what the residuals should be. And there's not a person in this room who hasn't done film or foreign television that can't tell me that their residuals have decreased exponentially. Next.
Okay. Great points. There's definitely been some irresponsible investing with our funds. I mean, you could have thrown a dart at the Dow and done a lot better. I just want to, there's some people texting me and stuff, so I wanted to get to some of their questions. And one of the questions is, well, first off, you know, there's 100, and you might, I think these are the right numbers, Pete, and you can kind of speak to the numbers, but I think there's 160,000 members, as I flashed up on the screen. There's 140,000 active members, 20,000 members vote. There are approximately 4,000 stunt votes out there. We're going to need 16,000 for Pete to get elected. One of the questions that keeps coming up is the fact that, you know, we only have 4,000 here in the stunts. Got to think what we've have mostly stunt people tuning in, but there are some actors and there are also some backgrounds, and the backgrounds represent a huge portion of the total amount of Screen Actor Guild and AFTRA union members. So what are you going to do to appeal to the background actors to get votes and, you know, speak to that, Pete, if you can?
Great question, Kathy. I posted a video recently in regards to the background issues, which has received over 26,000 views, which is quite phenomenal on social media. And the issue with background is basically in organizing and the right to work states, because there's four major issues. The first issue is that should be simple, is iActor is really an incompetent platform at SAG-AFTRA. It should be transformed into a site that functions like Actors Access, so that you can, anybody in any region in the country can then submit their picture to any production for free. As our guild should provide that service, something that's actually functional. Number two, we have an all-inclusive national board with the exception of background, and they should be guaranteed a national board seat. Number three, the car check, like I said, there's no compensation for inflation. That's got to be raised from $35 a day, you know, to $37.50 to $125 a day, and if you have a classic car, $250. Fourthly, the organizing issue, which is the most important. In right to work states, no one wants to join because they say, what's the value add? The value add is what we have to do. What we have to do that is increase. We must increase our contract enforcement because it's abysmal. And one of the main benefits for unions is be protected under the contract with your overtime and your rates for anything that you do over and above. You should be paid for, and actually even more than that, any body of background that's in Atlanta or in New Orleans that is not organized, and they get the benefit of horrible money being outside the zone. They need to go. We need to get all those members and petition the NLRB in each area. But as president, I will do something that no president's ever done. I will fly to those locals. I will help organize them and petition the NLRB with them, because the bottom line is that you're only as strong as the leaders that deal with you. And if you want to be organized, I wouldn't want to work on a non-union contract for $60 for 8. You get no coverage. You have no promise of any kind of health care, and there's no living wage. And as all members, as the stunt community has issues that they should certainly be guaranteed that they're not. They're getting left out in the dark, which I'll also fight for. We also need to do things to work with Mayor Garcetti in California. We'd want to work with also the mayor in New York. We'd also want to create alliances with the DGA and the WGA, which is what no one has done. I've had emails with the WGA president over contract issues so we can align ourselves. But the only way we can really get strength is to have the president's and of these three unions, the DJ, the WJ, and SAG-AFTRA, we need to align ourselves with certain issues, because the DJ, in fact, really gave away their video. They gave away the new media contract. They were the loss of leader. They could have said at the time, when the AMPTP stated that we don't know what new media is going to do, we haven't earned any money there yet, we don't know what the metric is, we haven't tested the field yet, and they said, so they didn't want, they used that as a case, so the negotiation would be, well, we got some abysmal deal. In my humble opinion, the DJ and the WJ and SAG-AFTRA should have stood together and said, no, we want the same deal. We'll take our percentage that we have on network television, and if it's nothing, guess what, it's okay. We'll take that percentage of nothing until you make money. When you make money, we want that same fee, because it's only fair, because when your ad revenue comes up, and I can prove that Netflix is making multi-billions of dollars, Amazon is making billions of dollars, and when you're talking about companies that are just run on, you know, iTunes, that run on, you know, per click, or cases or sites that run on ad revenue, you have to go to all of them and run financial analytics on all of them to create a fair residual base. This has to be done with mathematics, science, and people that understand finance, and somebody that will actually have the courage to get in and get it done. The leadership now has done none of this they've done none of it since Kent McCord was involved with the union, who actually demanded to do this. I'm going to encourage everyone that's on this panel to get all of their friends to run for delegates. We need delegates as well as national board and local board members. If we get delegates that run on our ticket, then we can elect ethical people in our executive vice president position, because what a lot of people don't know, in the last contract negotiations, we gave up the right to vote whether we wanted to have our health plans merge. It's done without our knowledge now. They merged, we didn't have a chance to vote on it. In 2012, we gave that up. Kent McCord, who was probably, in my opinion, one of the most honest, educated members ever to stand for people in this union, he came up and showed me the evidence that, and everyone else the evidence that he posted, that if we had voted this, a lot of the new constitution with a merger, that we would give up the right to vote on merging our health plan. Now, if we had that right and the members would be able to vote on it, we would have certainly demanded proper financial analytics to see if it was voted on, see if it was financially feasible and prudent and would benefit all of us. But we didn't get that opportunity. And one of my biggest gripes is that we're not run like a business. We don't have these analytics put in place. They just say, don't worry, we took care of you. Now, evidence has proven that they haven't taken care of us. Obviously, we have split earnings forever. Our pension plans are split amongst two different contracts, and every younger member who I'm looking at, with the exception of my pal Andy here, every time we work contracts, our money gets divided up. Instead of going to your plan, and if you make $300,000, a lot of your money is going to pay someone else for someone else's plan. Now, our plan is designed as a subsidy going forward in the first place. Think about this. If someone makes $16,900, he doesn't get health care, but he subsidizes every one of us that make over that amount of money. When the jobs go down, if this right to work continues, if the new media continues at this low rate, and those people that are making $16,900, if their salaries go down to 8, 5, 3, then they don't have, and it's all I want to say $125 a day contracts where we don't make money. That underlying subsidy that provides a capital that funds our healthcare will start disappearing. When that disappears, our premiums are going to start to go up. Now it's going to be $32,000 for Plan 1. Then it's going to be $35,000, then $40,000. Then Plan 2 is going to start running up to $20,000, $22,000, $23,000. If this trend continues and we don't do anything to benefit or organize more work, or we don't think like a business, like some of my ideas are I'd like to create apps that are income producing. We need to do marketing and merchandising, much like the NFL did. And I know the former NED that got ousted, Doug Allen, by Unite for Strength, he provided hundreds of millions of dollars for the NFL because he's the one that created the business model that allowed their jerseys and their hats to be sold in stores all over the malls in America, and created a boom for the NFL players. we have the biggest opportunity, in my opinion, to do that. I mean, I think as a union body, we can create revenue share applications and business models where we're selling actors paraphernalia and all kinds of things from films that we have rights to on a rights split business model where everyone can benefit. That's one. My opinion is that we should, in every local in the country, we should provide key cards. In other words, I would ask in LA as a model, I would like to charge $100 for a key card. That would provide about $3.8 to $4 million in 1 year. I'd like to take that money. I'd like to buy a 15,000 square foot space and outfit it with computers, with cameras, so you can shoot your own videos if you're an actor and send them off. You could create your own resumes. I want to put voiceover booths in there. I would want to create cameras that you'd have a room that you could create pre-visualizations for the stunt department. They have rehearsal halls for actors, a screening room, a lounge, create a community of actors with a green screen where you could shoot webisodes. I want to create a SAG-AFTRA channel so we can have our own channel. We can create some of our own employment and we could create money coming in from the licensing from those channels and the merchandising going back into SAG-AFTRA's general funds to start to making our union stronger financially, so we have a war chest if we ever have an issue. We have to start thinking like business people and not like we're just worried about our key light and worrying about where our next job comes from. We have to all as a unit work together to do this. I believe that the background, which I was a member of in 1979 for 1 year, they get treated for the most part pretty horribly. And you want to know what? Every human being has a soul that's created equal. I'm no better than they are. They're no better than me. And you're only as good as your weakest link in any venture. On your team, I don't care if it's football or baseball or anything you're doing as a team in a corporation, you're only as good as your weakest link. And we all must raise up together as a team. And I can't be arguing with another political party. Everyone should look at facts. We should all start from reality. I'm reality based, I'm honest, and the facts are we've been spending money negligently. The facts are the people that have been spending the money negligently should be removed from office. This isn't about whether you like Pete or you don't like Pete. This is about I'm not running as a candidate. The truth is running. Integrity is running. Honesty is running. Transparency is running. And accountability is running. And I stand in that. And that's what I'll deliver. And if people in the national board are against these principles, these virtues, and I'm president, I will out them publicly in the press. I will let every member know who is not looking out for the best interest of all, because the only thing that I stand for is the highest good of all members, the highest good of all beings. Robin. You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. I'll defer to Danny because he raised his hand earlier, and I'll come back in a minute.
Thank you. Hi, Pete. Danny Boyer, been around for about 18 years now. Stuntman and a stunt coordinator as well. Hi, Jen. Hi, Andy. Haven't seen you in a while. All very valid and great points. I'm glad you're running. Very happy to see you standing up for what is honest and what is right. Seems like we've been in a downward spiral and our union is spinning out of control ever so fast now. And a lot of these problems need to be addressed from the foundation, from the ground level. And part of my first question is, how do you intend to come in at that ground level and rebuild some of these problems? And it seems to me like we need to restructure them in a way to where it can't continue to go on, destroying our union. The other part is, yes, we talked about pension and health. We talked about residuals, contract. This seems to attack all those areas. Information being transferred, is one. It's being transferred too slowly. By the time that it gets back to us, these producers and these production companies have already moved on to something else. So how can we improve that is one. Next, you talked about analyzing contracts. Yes, I totally agree with you. Analyzing is the first step, but what are we going to do about our enforcement arm? Because I think first and foremost, you mentioned audits, right? Audit is great, but how are we going to enforce this better? Because it seems like the production companies are getting a slap on the wrist and it's nothing to them. You know, if you get pulled over in the street for running a red light, you're going to get a ticket right there and right then. You know, and it's going to maybe prevent people from doing it in the future. But if we can't have a stronger enforcement arm, they're going to continue to do this to our union.
Well, the DGA, good questions, thank you. The DGA has a great policy which I'd like to enforce. If someone goes and works and flies himself to a different location and violates our local hire issue, which is a huge issue around the country, what they do is if a DGA member does that, they get fined their entire week's salary. So they actually earn no money. And what we need to do to put some teeth in our deal is to shift the bylaws of the Screen Actors Guild so it's member enforced, because it's been ridiculous across the United States that a lot of members are continually violating their own contract, and the more members that violate the contract and combined with the SAG-AFTRA not enforcing it, it leads to a downward spiral of a lack of accountability and a lack of enforcement. I remember that they did there was a contract on a television show that was an NBC show that was shot in Texas that was domiciled in Los Angeles, and yet SAG-AFTRA did not file the necessary legal paperwork because they were paying people $75 a day to travel. Now, that's against the collective bargaining agreement, and they didn't enforce it, which I find unconscionable. As president, believe me, what I can do as president is I can certainly make sure that these laws are enforced, and I would certainly be a proponent of changing the way that the amendments in the Constitution, along with the National Board, to change the bylaws to put teeth in the deal. I made a recommendation that went nowhere. I made a recommendation years ago at the Stunt and Safety Committee that I said no member or no Screen Actors Guild member may ask another Screen Actors Guild member to waive any terms and conditions of the codified agreement. And I did that for the reason that I didn't want a producer coming to a stunt coordinator and saying, hey, would you guys waive the forced call today, or would you waive your 5 mil penalties, or doing something that was egregious. I'm not talking about the give and take, where if it's a small thing, because we've all given and taken with people that have been really ethical with us, and that's just the way business works. But the reason I did this is because many times coordinators only get a job because they play ball. And I've seen situations where producers have said, hey man, if you're not going to do this or play ball with me, I'm going to get someone else to coordinate. And when they're threatened with that, then they cow down to this kind of behavior. You have to be have strong character. But if I put this law into play, that means as a coordinator, you can go to the producer, Mr. Producer, I'm sorry, but I can't ask my members to waive anything. We have a bylaw in our contract, in our Constitution at SAG-AFTRA, that if I ask them, I could be fined $5,000. That's the law. And the bottom line is that we have to start creating checks and balances within our own laws to police ourselves. And number two, it's a fine line, because the people in right to work states are fed up, and the people that file for FICAR are fed up because every time they call the guild, the service has been abysmal. I mean, it's been horrible. You call the guild, and I've had claims for 3 and 4 years. I mean, a lot of friends of mine have had claims for 6 and 7 years, and then they go, oh, we just negotiated, you got 25 cents on the dollar. I know facts that a rep in New York had a commercial that was being done by several of my stunt brothers in New York City, and they were driving at a high rate of speed, and they tried to say that, oh, we didn't show that high rate of speed in the commercial, so we're not going to pay you residuals. But the fact is that they tried to pay them as precision drivers during the regular shoot, when in fact they have them on tape. They actually recorded them on an iPhone, the director telling them to go faster and faster, and they were naming 65 miles an hour, which clearly in our contract states that's a stunt. But the rep at SAG-AFTRA made the decision that it wasn't a stunt. How is it that any rep at SAG-AFTRA who's not a stunt professional is going to tell a producer or make that decision? That should be only done by a panel of stunt professionals. So there's a lot of things within the inner workings or the infrastructure of SAG-AFTRA that needs education and enforcement. And they need a leader that will actually stand for members. And I've been a member for 38 years, and I've worked all the contracts from VO as a background artist, I've worked as an extra. Obviously, I've worked as an actor. I've worked as a stunt performer, and I've worked in commercials. And I've been fortunate to travel all over the world, like my pal Andy Armstrong, and I have a very strong affinity for all members. And obviously, my roots are grounded in the stunt community, where there's no race, creed, or color, because it's like being in a war. If you're getting lit on fire or getting turning over cars with pyrotechnics, you got to rely on your brothers and sisters to keep you from dying, because sometimes there are smoke inhalation or things that you're working in water, and if you don't have people around you that are conscious and safety, you could check out of this life. So there's no color. There's no color. I see no color, and the problem is in this union is so divisive. Instead of changing the language to the human team, it's all about, well, let's talk about the Black Stuntmen's Association and the Asian activists and the LGBT. They should throw all those labels out and consolidate that into the human team, because everyone has hearts and souls and should be treated equally. It shouldn't be a matter of you deserve a right. I deserve rights because I'm Sicilian and I'm Spanish, and I deserve more rights than you because you're Black and Puerto Rican. There should be none of that exists. It should all be the human team, and we should all work together towards the common goal of a livable wage, health care, and pension benefits for all. If we don't do this, our union will continue to erode in a downward spiral until it will be broken. Robin?
Danny, it sounded like you maybe had a second part to your question. Do you?
Yes, thanks for asking. The other part is kind of on the right side. With all the technologies these days and the money involved and invested in different software and programs and whatnot being in the 21st century, why are we still filling out paper Gs? And this has been asked to me many, many times. Why isn't there a computer software program where you can just, boom, hit a button and there it is? SAG knows about it. And a PA who just graduated from high school can't use whiteout to change the times.
Absolutely. That's a very, very good point. It's archaic that we're still putting things on paper that people can change, and still blatantly the rule that a non-DGA AD, they still give PAs these things to fill out, and they're still getting changed. There should be a really stiff penalty for changing what is a legal agreement. We've got to start enforcing that, because it doesn't get enforced. I know lots and lots of shows where the Gs are modified afterwards, and there's no policing in effect to do it. It's ridiculous.
Greg Smyj, I know many of you know Greg is a very, very successful stunt coordinator, second unit director, is a pal of mine, and I know that he brought this to the attention of the wages and working conditions, and I believe, I have some hope that they're trying to implement that, because in this digital age, you're absolutely correct. I remember 10 years ago and 15 years ago when I was working on Die Hard 2, and I actually got ridiculed and lambasted because I was the only stunt member of that crew who refused to sign the Exhibit G without getting my times. What do you mean, Pete? Blah, 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 blah. I'd get this. We want to hurry up and go back to the hotel. And I always stuck to my guns, and they thought I was a pain in the ass. And to them, I was a pain in the ass, but I stood up for what they should have been doing, because by doing that, I remember almost every time I'd work on location and sign Exhibit Gs, I would do this. And if I didn't do it, I would spend hours and hours trying to correct what was incorrect. And I, as a rule, I probably found in between $10,000 to $15,000 in check mistakes over the course of any year. If you actually, now everybody's with their iPhone, they take pictures of it. So I'm very pleased that they're using their technology to make sure that no one changes anything, which is phenomenal. But why is it? You see how the conversations in integrity have changed. So they used to get mad at people who would question somebody about filling in times. But respectfully, when you're on adjustments and you have a lot of overtime, if they screw that up for a half an hour, it could cost you $200 or $300. Why should we give that away? I remember we did a study at Universal. I think they had 100,000 employees. So imagine if they screwed my check up for $80.
Holy fuck.
Now, if
That
you,
Walsh just looks like the fucking Unabomber.
if you, we're speaking, if we spoke, if we, the wonderful Brian Smyj,
All right,
if
I'll call
we
you back.
found 80 people, if I got an $80 discrepancy in my check, and then the employees at Universal, 100,000 of them, if they just had a dollar mistake every week in their check, that's $100,000 a week that's being pocketed by a corporation that's not going to the employees' hands. The things that I would think would be feasible, I'd like to create a computer system, and Greg Smyj is in line with this, and he actually had a system where you could plug in your checks and you could get exactly what you were owed to the penny. Now, this should actually be implemented at SAG-AFTRA, because when you get it, you should be able to go plug your integers in, and all of a sudden you're going to get what you get. Robin?
I just want to point out to this point that recently SAG announced that, with great pride, that they have this app on the cell phone now where you can track your residuals and various other things. So they spent time in tech on creating something like that. There isn't any reason that much of this money that is being spent to refurbish a building we don't own couldn't be spent to do things that further the needs of our members, like these electronic.
And absolutely, and there's millions of 17-year-old kids out there that could develop an app that would, develop a program that would make that stuff electronically go from the set, and it couldn't be illegal. That it should be a legal offence. It's ridiculous. I mean, you shouldn't have to police contracts like that in such an archaic way where people can use.
Exactly. And considering what several people have said already, that, try even getting someone on the phone at SAG-AFTRA who knows what the hell you're asking about is, a protean task. You just can't, it's very, very difficult. So now but they've been, and they're also working at SAG on some deal with City National Bank in order to have residuals of, deposited electronically in a way that we haven't done before. So they're amenable to certain things, but not to a lot of things that make a huge difference on a day-to-day basis for contract enforcement. And then they trot out these shiny ponies as though, look at everything that we are doing for you, the members, instead of actually putting their attention to the nuts and bolts daily tasks that is required of a union in service of its members.
Robin, I agree with you 1,000%. And let me say this, in technology, we're behind the times. There are people that I know in technology that are absolutely brilliant, and they look at our model and what we're doing and they say, who the hell is running your union? Who is running your ship? Because the technology advancements, even like Cupid Hayes, who's not here and I would attest to, it is abysmal. There are phenomenal advancements in technology that we could use, and we have to be on the cutting edge of new distribution systems and fiber optics. These things that are coming out that you're dealing with on your phones, like heads-up displays. There's all kinds of things that I've been studying that are going to be the wave of the future of exhibition. And we need to get in on this now and actually hire some people and consultants that would benefit us, because it's archaic that we should be living in such dark ages in regards to technology. And there's no excuse for it. And we just have to put some money, like you said, Robin, the wasteful spending should be used for member services and to reorganize.
Oh, we lost Pete there for a second.
Looks like we lost Pete, but we do have a new panelist that popped up. He probably spent the morning putting up the film reels behind him to look like an all-star. It's Brian Smyj down there. Brian, you always have a lot to say. I don't know if
Pat, you look like the Unabomber, for crazy.
I am that guy. Hey, yes, speak. Brian, what do you have to say? What's going on?
Hey, Pete, what's happening? I've been, 30 years we've been fighting this fight, and really haven't gotten anywhere. We've gotten less, and it seems like every year we get less and less, more indifference and more bullshit. And, you know, my personal opinion is not to get into it with a system that doesn't want to change. There is nothing in it for SAG to change. And I don't know what power or control the president does or does not have, because there's limitations in all political structures. And I've had this conversation with Pat and many other people. It's like, I don't think that we should be doing this with people that don't want to change, and there's nothing in it for them to change. And when we merged with the Screen Extras Guild and their volume took over our union with votes, it's no longer the Screen Actors Guild, it's the Screen Extras Guild. And as a politician, if you want to get elected, you don't go after a group of 3,000 people or 4,000 people, you go after a group of 50,000 people. And that's who you make happy. And that's what SAG has been doing. Now, I told Pat and a couple of other people, I was on a job about 2 months ago, I'm Madam Secretary. I show up and there's 21 background, they're ESU guys that do special ability background, doing the entire shootout. There's not one stunt person, none. And it used to be that was a conflicting union. That would be like, you know, IATSE's people taking over our jobs. It's not that way anymore because they merged. And I don't see how this can be resolved from the inside when they're still members and they have no interest in what we have and what we want. It's not in their best interest for us to get more out of this guild. And
Brian, let me interject something, brother. The fact is that I think most of what you said is true, except for one thing. The background, actually, they're not making the background happy. I mean, the background has no seat on the national board. They're not organized in most of the states. They're making 8 hours for $60. They've got no way to get a pension and health plan. They're really underrepresented, which is why every time somebody on the other team is promised them things that they think will get delivered upon, which never does, you know, they vote for them. And the problem is the dissemination of information. Every time SAG runs an election, they use their magazine or their emails to then spread out propaganda of how great the things that they're doing now is and what they're doing going forward, without a proper dissenting voice, without the truth. The bottom line is it's like Gabriel Cateris recently said they organized 149 Spanish actors in Florida, but she neglected to say that you have to get a contract that's fair, agreed upon by Telemundo in order for that to take effect. She further forgot to say that 90% of the work in Florida is not the union. So what is she going to do? Is she going to then say, then if we can organize and work in Telemundo, then you can't work on any other shows that allow you to actually pay your rent and feed your family?
There's a lot of scramble there, Pete. Something happened with tone. I don't know if people have their mutes off.
Brian, if you can, when you're not speaking, could you mute your computer, just because we're getting a lot of feedback, but the microphone, just be cognizant of that. We have a lot of people come through. There's Scott Wilder, wishes you all the best. He wanted to join the panel as well. Dean Devlin, who's a producer, he joined us for a bit. So we've had a lot of great people, and this is just kind of a hack we're putting together here.
This is a great forum, which I appreciate, but I just wanted to state, when you're saying everybody claps and rah and they put it on the magazine we organized, I applaud you for this intention. However, you must lay out the facts. They don't lay out the fact that most of the work is non-union. And are you going to tell me that she's going to organize 149 people that don't pay an initiation fee because she gave it to them for free? And I don't know how fair that is, considering she doesn't organize CNN, MSNBC, and NBC. They're all working non-union. The fact that they allow people to work off our card, who are card carrying members at those big networks, and then all those people that actually work as newscasters on those networks can then work any other after show, is unconscionable to me. As president, either you abide by the card or you don't, because if you don't abide by the card when I'm president, I'll give you a month to do so, and I'll expel you from the guild. Gabriel Kateris telling me about the 149, again, are you enforcing Global Rule 1? Are you telling those 149 Spanish people that signed, that were very happy, that if you can't make a living and we don't get a good contract with Telemundo, and that's the only place where you could work in Florida, as opposed to all the non-union commercials and print ads and film that happens in Miami and the Spanish markets, you're going to tell, if you could tell me, Gabrielle, that with certainty that these 149 members are not going to work off their card non-union, because what she in fact is doing, if she allows them to do that, is she's actually promoting non-union work. And she promotes non-union work, as AFTRA did, by allowing CNN, MSNBC, NBC to work off our card. So why doesn't she pull the cards? See, this to me is a double standard and shouldn't be allowed. And I believe that you either stand together and abide by the rules, or the rules make no sense and you don't stand in the integrity in which this union was founded. So does Robin, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I was in the national board meeting when they announced this inclusion of these Spanish Telemundo performers, and offering them no initiation fee to join us, because this was supposed to be a great strengthening of our ranks. And I made the proposal that, all right, if we do this, if we accept them in, and we, in order to help them organize, that we accept them in and waive an initiation fee, let's put a time limit on how long we will accept people joining or allow these people not to pay. And it was dismissed as though it was, there was no point in that. It's what I have perceived is that there is a lot of, Pete is absolutely right. Global Rule 1 is supposed to be the big #1 rule of the union, but there are many, many people who work, who violate that. And big names, newscasters, a lot of newscasters, you know, get their contract at NBC and then go to MSNBC and work and don't have to contribute anything to the pension and health or dues or anything. So so that's an issue. And it seems to me that there is so much energy going out to getting this little bit and that little bit, and handing and trying to get more dues paying members into the union. And that's where the energy is going, rather than enforcing the laws and the contracts that already exist. A great deal of the national board meeting is spent with committee reports about, you know, the entertaining things that they did and the people that they brought in. There's a lot of time spent on self-congratulation and videos that feature all the same people, and very little actual work of the union seems to get done. Those of us who have a fiscal responsibility to the union are, we had to fight like dogs to get the financial reports ahead of time, so we could look at them, and then they're taken away from us right away for fear that secrets will be released, you know? And so, yeah, I think that it's, I think we are not paying attention to the things to which we need to pay attention. And we are expending a lot of energy out there trying to enlarge a union that is already not being properly serviced.
Great, thank you, Robin. I got about 5 minutes and I have to go to a speaking engagement, but I'd like to, to comment that it's utterly unconscionable that our national board would receive, financial reports, in like a few-hour meeting and then ask to review it, because it would take really days to go over those financial reports. I mean, it took me 16 hours to go over the LM2s properly, and I wrote a lot of the missives, and I had uncovered the car washes and all the things that were in the news last year. I uncovered by going over and actually reading and dissecting the LM2s. And if I had spent another 8 hours, I'd have a lot more questions about a lot of those interviews managers put in those LM2s, because it's, when I call it a muddy document, a lot of, like, the unclaimed residuals trust and producer bonds are lumped into one line item, which is, it shouldn't be that way. It should be the unclaimed residuals trust should be a separate item. This is what we owe members, and this is the producer bonds that is coming in and out of our union, because every time a producer makes a movie that's SAG, they have to post a bond, and that figure is always rolling because people are always finishing and entering. So that rolling number continues to come in. So, but there's a lot of items in that LM2 that should be broken down into line items, so we know exactly where we stand. And not many people are financial, so, you know, and most of them are actor performers, and I don't expect them to be. I happen to have a affinity for those things, and I have an affinity for protecting people that I believe protect me. I believe I've worked in one of the greatest industries in the world. I've had a beautiful time. I still do. I love this business, and if it wasn't for the forefathers and Hal Needham and James Cagney and the actors and stunt people who have stood for the members, pension and health and residuals, I wouldn't have all the benefits that I enjoy today. Surely, like everybody on this panel. So, in order to keep things and improve on it, we have to think like businessmen, and we have to create a model that will bring in income going forward. And I have to leave. I'm going to say, Robin, you can say what you want to say, but I have to go. I'm speaking to a bunch of members in Atlanta in the film community here, and I have to go and get there so I'm not late. So I wanted to thank everyone for their kindness and courtesy, and we definitely want to do this again. I'd like to thank Pat Walsh, and I support Pat for his runs on the board in New York, and I certainly support Robin Riker as a national board member. I support Jennifer Badger and all the good she's doing in Atlanta, and Andy, my good friend. And I just met you today, boy. I thank you. I thank you for your eloquence and your concern. But the only way we can make a difference is to spread the message of ethics and principles, because we should be led by ethics and principles and not by propaganda and bullshit. And you want people, everyone on our national board and everyone that serves as presidents, as secretary, treasurer, should stand for the members and stand for accountability and stand for this union being run in transparency for the benefit of the membership, which designed it, which put it into existence. Thank you so much. Robin?
I just want to underscore something you said, Pete, earlier, which is, and something that that Pat mentioned as well, is that we only, of 160,000 members, 20,000 members are the ones who make the decisions in elections about what our board is going to look like, who's going to be representing us. And so the critical thing to do is for all of you and anyone who's listening, to participate in this election and to spread the word of things that you've heard and seen here, to look at that petition so you have provenance and chapter and verse to quote, to sign that petition so we can stand stronger. Those of you younger members and anyone else, we do need delegates, because the delegates are the one who choose the executive vice president, and they do that at convention, which I happen to think is another waste of our money, but never mind. We need delegates. Run for delegate. You pull a petition, you sign your own name, you're running for a delegate, and you get people to support you. It's just such a small number of active participants in the union. There are 140,000 active, and only 20,000 of those people make the difference in the election. So everyone here who's listening can make a difference. And one of my favorite quotes from Aristotle is, the only way to avoid criticism is to say nothing, do nothing, and be nothing. And I can tell by the participation of this panel that you are not those people, that you do stand for something. And I think it's critical that we get this word out, that accountability, transparency, and service of the members is the most important thing. So participate. That is the most important thing that any member can do. And
well, thank you, Robin. That's awesome. And I'm going to give you a quote by Plato: "Those who are complacent in politics are destined to be ruled by their inferiors." And lastly, if you're in Nevada, run for delegate. We need delegates there. Hawaii, I talked to my Hawaiian brothers, Brian Kailani. I know they're supporting and get your delegate votes in. And in Chicago, I want those people that support us to run for delegate. And in Mississippi, we need you to run for delegates that support. And for the great state of Minnesota, we want your delegates over there who support us. We need delegates there as well. So everyone participate, because we need this message of accountability on honesty and transparency to grow like wildfire. Because in this country, with the state of affairs, where we've been so misled and the politics are so derisive and so corrupt and so unethical, we have to lead by example. So we're making a change. We're not going to be led. We're not going to be stand for being led by people that are unethical, that lack principle, that lack transparency, that lack honesty anymore. And the only way we can make a difference is to stand in it and ask everybody around us to do so. So thank you all very, very much. And I wish you a good day, and we'll do this again.